New Year's Eve. Her joke. My envelope. You ever have one of those moments where time seems to split? Like there's the life you had before something happened, and the one that comes after? That's what New Year's Eve was for me. The night everything changed. Not because I didn't already know, but because that was the night she forced my hand. Sarah had always been the loud one between the two of us. Witty, bold, charming in that way that made people lean in when she talked. She could turn a regular dinner party into a performance, and most of the time I didn't mind. I liked watching her shine. But there's a fine line between charismatic and cruel. And that night, she crossed it without blinking. It was one of those everyone we know kind of parties. Eric's annual New Year's bash, fancy lights, champagne towers, a rented speaker system too loud for his small living room. All of our mutual friends were there, plus coworkers, neighbors, people we knew from the gym, even her old college roommate who always flirted with me when Sarah wasn't looking. I wasn't expecting a quiet night, but I also wasn't expecting to be humiliated. I was near the makeshift bar, chatting with a friend from work, when I heard her voice rise from the other side of the room. Not angry, playful. She was already tipsy, doing what she does when the drinks hit her just right. Putting on a show. I promised I'd leave him last year. Should have done it then. The room burst into laughter. That sharp, reflexive kind of laugh people give when they're not sure if someone is kidding but don't want to look uptight by asking. And Sarah? She was standing dead center in the crowd, glass of Prosecco in one hand, her other arm thrown around some guy from her team at work. Nick, the guy I'd been watching from a distance for a while now. That comment? It hit like **cur punch. I froze. Just stood there. I wasn't even sure if I heard her right, but everyone else clearly had. A few people looked over at me, then quickly looked away. I walked over slowly, not angrily, not dramatically, just calm, controlled. My heart was racing, but I didn't let it show. I reached into the inner pocket of my coat and pulled out the envelope I had brought. It was a slim manila one, folded neatly. Inside, printed screensh *TS. Messages from that very morning between Sarah and Nick. I hadn't even had time to process them myself when I found them. They were just there, left open on her laptop like she'd forgotten to close the tab. Or maybe she didn't think I'd bother to look. Maybe she stopped caring whether I found out. I was going to wait. I had told myself I'd confront her privately. Wait until after the holidays. Maybe try counseling first. Maybe give her a chance to explain. But standing there, in that room full of people, with her laughing about leaving me like I was a joke, something in me snapped. Not loudly, not violently, quietly, like the moment a door clicks shut and locks from the other side. I walked right up to her and held out the envelope. Her smile faltered. "What's this?" she asked, still performing, still keeping the energy light. I didn't answer, just looked her in the eyes and nodded toward the envelope. She opened it in front of everyone. The shift in the room was immediate. 1 second, it was all laughter and clinking glasses. The next, silence. Heavy, uncomfortable. You could almost hear the mood crash like a chandelier hitting tile. She pulled out the papers and started reading. "I can't wait any longer. We'll figure it out. I'll fix everything soon." Her own words, from hours ago, while I was making breakfast, while she was saying she was just heading to the gym. Her expression changed in real time. First confusion, then something harder to read. Panic, anger, and then, just like that, she let out a laugh. Loud, too loud. "Oh my God, Justin," she said, waving the papers in the air like they were a birthday card she didn't ask for. "Really? You're pulling this now? This is your big moment?" The crowd didn't know what to do. Some people looked away. A few glanced between us, waiting to see where this was going. She held up the papers and spun toward the audience. "This is fake," she said, with a grin that didn't reach her eyes. "Bad edits. Old screensh *TS. I mean, look at this. This is like photoshopped or something, right? He's trying to make me look crazy." Nick, who up to this point had been standing behind her, took one step back, like he'd just realized the spotlight might hit him too. "Justin," she added, her voice louder now, This is messed up. You're the one who's been acting weird lately, remember? Coming home late, hiding your phone? And now you're trying to flip the narrative in front of everyone? What are you trying to humiliate me? The gaslighting was instant, practiced, like she had rehearsed this moment and was ready for it. Her voice had that fake confusion layered with outrage, and for a second, I wondered how many times she had done this, rewritten reality on the spot just to keep control. But here's the thing about truth. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. I didn't respond. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't argue. I just let her spiral. One of our mutual friends, Dan, stepped forward. "Sarah, come on." "What?" she snapped, her tone changing like a switch flipping. "You believe this? Seriously? You think I'm cheating on him? With Nick?" She turned to Nick, who looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. He raised his hands. "I'm not. I didn't know this was." "Wow," she said, cutting him off. "So everyone's against me now? Great. Real supportive group we have here." The silence that followed was brutal. She tried again. "These are old *TS. He's been digging through my stuff for months. He doesn't trust me. He's trying to make a scene to punish me for what? For working late? For having friends?" It would have almost worked, almost if not for the details. Like how the messages referenced dates and events that had just happened. Or how one of them said, "Your husband won't suspect anything if we meet at the new place again." There was no coming back from that. And the panic in her eyes was betraying her, even as her voice stayed performative. She laughed again, but now it was quieter, shaky, and no one was laughing with her. I looked at her, really looked, and realized something that hit me harder than the messages had. She wasn't trying to fix anything. She wasn't even sorry. She was just scrambling to rewrite the story, to stay in control. I handed the envelope to Dan. "You read them. Tell me if I'm crazy." He took them hesitantly, then skimmed the top message. His eyes widened. He didn't say anything, just folded the paper and handed it back. Sarah scoffed and stormed off toward the bathroom. I didn't follow. No one said a word for a long time. Eventually, someone restarted the music. Looking back, I think I always knew. After the party, I didn't scream. I didn't break anything. I didn't make a scene. I just left. The house was quiet when I got home. Too quiet. You know that kind of silence that feels like it's waiting for something? That's what I walked into. No sounds from the TV. No scent of her perfume trailing in the hallway. No half-sung tune from upstairs while she brushed her teeth. Just silence. And memory. I dropped my keys on the counter and stood there for a second, staring into nothing, trying to figure out what hurt more. The fact that she had done it, or the fact that I let myself believe she never would. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the floor. My chest was tight, but not from surprise. Not really. If I was being honest with myself, I hadn't been surprised in a long time. Shocked by how far it had gone. Sure. But surprised that it was happening? No, not anymore. Because the truth is, the signs were always there. Started small. The kind of things you'd never notice if you weren't already looking for something. But looking back now, I can see how it built. Like a puzzle slowly coming together, except the image at the end wasn't a picture I wanted to see. She started placing her phone face down. That was the first thing. I remember the exact night I noticed it, too. We were watching that true crime documentary she liked, the one with the couple who staged a fake disappearance. She was always into that stuff, weirdly obsessed with the psychology behind betrayal. Maybe that should have been a clue on its own. Her phone lit up once. Just a text. I didn't see the name, but when I glanced over, she casually flipped the phone over, face down on the couch cushion like it was nothing. I didn't say anything at the time. I told myself it was rude to snoop, that it was probably work. But that was the moment it started. This little voice in my head, whispering that something was off. From there, it escalated. She started deleting text threads. I asked her about it once, and she laughed. "You know how full my phone gets. I delete old stuff for space. You should do the same. Your phone's probably a disaster." I nodded, played along, but I started paying attention. Every time I borrowed her phone to check something, a recipe, a map, whatever. It felt like she was watching me. Like really watching. Not out of curiosity, but control. Like she was waiting to see if I'd stumble into something I wasn't supposed to. Then there was the laptop. We used to share everything. Passwords, emails, even playlists. But out of nowhere, she changed her laptop login. When I asked, she brushed it off. Work made me update it, something about security protocols. You know how strict they've been lately. Except she didn't work in cybersecurity. She worked in HR. Nobody in HR was getting new encryption policies. But again, I didn't press. I didn't want to seem controlling. Funny how cheaters love to *p***nize the idea of control. Makes you second-guess every gut instinct you have. And the late nights? They became normal. At first, it was once a week. I have to stay and finish onboarding paperwork. Then twice. Then it was Nick needs help setting up for the training session. Or, the team wants to go out after work, just for a drink. Harmless stuff. She always made sure to throw in the names of other coworkers like it was a group thing. I believed her. Or maybe I wanted to. And the perfume, that was probably the most ridiculous detail, but it stuck with me. She used to wear something light, subtle. The kind of scent you notice only when she hugs you or walks past too quickly. But suddenly it changed. Sharp, bold, something new. I made a dumb joke about it once. Said it smelled like she was going to seduce a stranger. She didn't laugh. It's from a sample box, she said. I'm just trying something different. It was so small, so irrelevant at the time. But looking back, it wasn't about the perfume. It was about the shift. She had started presenting herself to the world in a way she no longer did at home. She used to wear sweats around the house. We'd order takeout, sprawl on the couch, talk about dumb things. But that faded, too. Now, every night she was out, it was a dress, heels, lipstick. Then she'd come home tired, drained, emotionally gone. I'd ask how her night was. Fine, she'd say. Nothing exciting. Every answer felt like a padlock. Short, closed off. I used to think she was just tired from work. I used to think she needed space. But no. She was already giving herself to someone else. And you know what's messed up? The part that really guts me? There were times I blamed myself. I thought I was working too much. Thought maybe I wasn't listening enough. Maybe I wasn't adventurous enough, spontaneous enough. I started reading relationship advice articles like some kind of desperate teen. How to rekindle passion. How to communicate better. How to be more present. And all the while, she was slipping further away. Not because of what I lacked, but because she had already made her choice. She just hadn't told me yet. But the worst part wasn't the cheating itself. It was the performance. The way she'd lean into me when we were out. Just enough for others to say, "They're such a cute couple." The little comments she dropped to friends. "Justin's been so supportive lately. I don't know how I got so lucky." Every compliment felt like a cover story. A press release for a marriage that had already expired behind the scenes. Even her arguments started to feel rehearsed. When I'd ask about her being distant, she'd flip it. "You're just being paranoid. Honestly, Justin, maybe you need to work on your own insecurities." That one stuck with me. I remember going for a drive that night, just to clear my head, wondering if I really was the problem. She was rewriting our history in real time, and I was letting her. Because I didn't want to believe it. Because it's easier to blame stress, or routines, or timing. Anything but the truth. That the person you've trusted most is actively building an escape plan that doesn't include you. So when I saw those texts from that morning, clear as day, no code, no ambiguity, everything clicked into place. I can't wait any longer. I'll fix everything soon. He has no idea. That last one hit different. Like a final insult. A full sentence that wiped out a decade of trust. She was talking about me like I was an obstacle. Not a person. Not a partner. Just a loose end she needed to tie up. That's when I realized. I hadn't been losing her slowly. She was already gone. I stopped wondering. I started knowing. I didn't sleep the night after the party. I lay on the couch in the dark. Phone off. Lights off. Blinds shut. I wasn't crying. I wasn't screaming. I just felt numb. numb and hollow, like someone had scooped out my insides and left the shell to keep going through the motions. Sometime around 3 a.m., I sat up and stared at the TV without turning it on. Just sat there. The silence was loud. The kind of loud that hurts your ears. And I realized I couldn't live in that silence anymore. That's when I remembered the laptop. Sarah's laptop had always been off limits after she changed the password. But that night, for whatever reason, she'd left it open on the kitchen table. Screen still glowing, half asleep, like it had dozed off waiting for someone to notice. I walked over, every step heavier than the last, and sat down in front of it. She was logged into everything. No password prompt. No screensaver. Just a paused video call, frozen on one man's face. Nick. He was mid-sentence when she must have hit pause or locked the screen. His mouth open, eyes locked on the camera, like he was mid-promise. At the bottom of the window was the last bit of dialogue caught on the call. Soon, baby. You haven't changed your mind, have you? I stared at that sentence for a long time. I didn't breathe, didn't blink. My hands were gripping the table so tightly that the wood creaked under my fingers. The pause button mocked me. The whole screen mocked me. I minimized the window. My hands moved on their own now. Not like a man snooping, not like someone crossing a line, but like someone turning over the final stone that was always meant to be lifted. On her desktop was a folder named Q2 Planning. Cute, professional, boring. Nothing that would make anyone look twice. Inside were photos, dozens of them, some selfies, some candid, all of them from a trip she told me was a girls' weekend at the spa. Except the spa had beach chairs, and a private plunge pool. And Nick, in the pictures they were holding hands, clinking glasses, her head on his shoulder. One photo, taken by someone else, had them sitting at a private table with a bottle of champagne, her hand resting over his like it belonged there. The metadata confirmed the dates. Right when she said she was with Beth and Amanda at that fancy resort 2 towns over. I believed her, even drove her to the train station, kissed her goodbye, told her to relax and unplug. She unplugged all right. From us. I kept scrolling. At the bottom of the folder were 2 video files. One was a screen recording of a video call between her and Nick. The other was just labeled transfer request. My stomach turned before I even opened it. It was a scanned document, an actual signed authorization for a funds transfer. Our shared savings account. The amount wasn't catastrophic, but it was significant. It was sent to an account under a company name I didn't recognize. I Googled it. It was real. Registered in a different state. Owned by Nicholas M. Carter. I checked the timestamp. 3 days ago. This wasn't just cheating. This was a plan. This was theft. Betrayal on a level that made physical cheating look like child's play. She wasn't just leaving me. She was trying to fund her exit with my money. With our money. With the account I built while skipping vacations. While saying maybe next year to every dream I put on hold for us. The rage didn't come all at once. Crept in slowly. Like rising water in a room where you didn't realize the floor was sinking. I stood up. Pushed the chair in slowly. Walked upstairs to our bedroom where she was sleeping, back turned to me. One leg kicked out from under the blanket like she always did when she was too warm. She looked peaceful. That made me sick. I stood in the doorway for a moment. I could have confronted her right then. Could have yelled, woken her up, demanded answers. But what was the point? I'd seen enough. She'd already made her decision. The only thing left was mine. So I packed a bag. Not out of anger. Out of necessity. I grabbed essentials: passport, birth certificate, tax documents, the checkbook, spare keys, hard drives, bank tokens, the lockbox. Anything that had weight. Anything that tied to my name, my identity, my future. I left my wedding ring on the bathroom counter. Right next to her bottle of perfume. The sharp one. Fitting. And then I walked out. The air was cold and biting. The streets were quiet. I drove without music, without a plan. Just moving for the sake of not standing still. I checked into a hotel under my middle name. Paid cash. Took a long shower. Sat on the edge of the bed in a towel. Phone in hand. staring at the screen like it owed me answers. I didn't call anyone. Not yet. I didn't want comfort. I told you so. I didn't want pity. I wanted clarity. I went back through the **ts, the emails, the images burned into my brain. I pulled them into a folder, labeled it dissolution, cold, clinical. But that's what this was now. The marriage had died. What remained was logistics. I emailed my lawyer at 6:04 a.m. Subject line, urgent, dissolution filing. I didn't explain, just attached the folder and wrote, please call when you're in. Need to move fast. Then I locked the phone and dropped it on the bed. Everything that had felt uncertain hours ago now had sharp edges. She hadn't made a mistake. This wasn't an accident. It wasn't a drunken lapse in judgment or a we grew apart scenario. This was structure, intention, a well-constructed lie carried out over months, maybe longer, with planning, backup plans, and financial engineering. She had lied with confidence. She had looked me in the eye over breakfast, talked about retirement plans, and kissed me goodbye while coordinating her affair over text. She had been both versions at once, the wife who promised to love me and the woman who was already halfway out the door. But I wasn't going to beg for answers. I had all the answers I needed. I wasn't going to ask why, because she'd only lie again. I wasn't going to chase her, scream at her, or ask her to stay. That's not who I am. What I was going to do was move forward, quietly, precisely. I'd let her be the one who stumbles when she realizes the floor disappeared beneath her. I'd let her panic when her access is gone. I'd let her explain to Nick why the money stopped flowing, why the plan stalled, why her name no longer carried weight. Let her feel that for once. Because from now on, I was no longer her foundation. I was her exit, and I just removed the door. This wasn't running away. This was removing myself from her script. The morning after I left, I didn't check in with anyone. I didn't call family. I didn't text friends. I didn't even check social media. I kept the blinds drawn in my hotel room and let the silence settle around me like armor. Sarah would wake up around 8, maybe 8:15. She'd stretch, check her phone, maybe scroll a bit before getting out of bed. I knew her routine like the back of my hand. She wouldn't notice right away. She'd walk into the kitchen, make her lemon water, never coffee in the morning, said it made her jittery, and then she'd call for me. Probably a quick babe, like she always did when she didn't see me in the kitchen. Then she'd notice the wedding ring, then the open laptop, then the absence. And maybe, just maybe, her heart would race for a second. She'd text me. I'd get the preview on my lock screen. Where are you? Or maybe, we need to talk. But I wouldn't open it. Wouldn't let the read receipt give her any power. Let her wonder. Let her stew in that silence. By 9:30, she'd check the joint bank account. Or at least she'd try to. Because I'd already been there. Already changed the passwords. Already updated the two-factor authentication and rerouted recovery emails. I'd already locked her out of every financial tool she once had access to. She would try her credit card next, our shared one. She'd swipe it at a coffee shop or a gas station, something casual, and it would be declined. Because that morning I froze the card. And the backup. And the third account she didn't even think I remembered existed. I knew where all the bodies were buried, digitally speaking. By 10:30, I imagined she'd be calling our financial advisor, Jason. Probably furious. Probably trying to sound calm, professional, trying to twist the story in her favor. But Jason already had a letter from me, delivered that morning via priority courier. He'd open the sealed document and see the authorization to restrict all access to shared funds. Attached was the scanned evidence. The texts, the photos, the transfer request to Nick's shell company. Everything was there. Labeled, ordered, stamped. There was even a post-it I left for Jason in my own handwriting. Section 4. 3. Forfeiture of joint assets upon breach of trust. She'll know what that means. And she would, because we had an agreement, a clause buried in the prenup, one she skimmed and signed because she was in love and sure she'd never cross that line. One I fought to include back when she joked that prenups were for people who already planned to fail. Then I guess you've got nothing to worry about, I told her, and she laughed. She laughed and signed. But that clause? That clause meant that if one party knowingly diverted shared assets to an undisclosed beneficiary while in a romantic relationship with said beneficiary, they forfeited access to marital equity. Plain English. You cheat and try to steal? You lose the money. She'd forgotten. Hadn't. By 11:15, she'd be calling the lawyer. Except he wouldn't answer. Not without written authorization, which she no longer had. I had revoked it first thing that morning via a signed affidavit, submitted electronically and verified by a notary. She'd leave a voicemail, maybe 3, maybe 10, but they'd go unanswered. I imagined her walking through the house, pacing barefoot, trying to stay composed while the walls quietly closed in. Maybe she'd open the closet. Maybe that's when it would really hit her, because everything of mine was gone. My suits, my watches, the coat she loved to borrow in winter, my laptop, my guitar, my documents, my keys, my backup drives, gone. The safe, empty. The passport drawer, cleared. Even my toothbrush, removed. All that remained was the ring, the note, and a single, neatly sealed envelope on the kitchen table. Inside it, the letter from my lawyer and a list of accounts, asset transfers, and legal notices, each one already processed, already activated. It wasn't a tantrum. It wasn't revenge. It was a clean cut. I didn't slam doors. I didn't change the locks. I just disappeared. She wouldn't be able to log into my email. I'd wiped the iPad. She'd call my old number and get a "this number is no longer in service" message, because I swapped out the SIM card that morning, set up a new one under an alias, kept my contacts off-grid. This wasn't an escape. This was a strategy, a controlled extraction from a toxic, collapsing structure. I hadn't realized how long I'd been planning it, not until I saw how easy it was to walk away. Every piece had already been in motion. The documents, the backup copies, the storage unit with my essential things, the financial firewall. It was like my mind had been preparing for this even while my heart was trying to pretend everything could still be fixed. But there was nothing left to fix. She didn't just break trust. She sold it, traded it in for whispers and secret calls and side accounts and stolen weekends. So now she'd feel the absence of my presence, of my protection, of my patience. Every time she tried to pull a string, she'd realize it had already been cut. Every lifeline she thought she had, gone. She wouldn't find traces of me, because I didn't leave a mess. I left a vacuum, and it would echo. By the end of the day, she'd have no access to funds, no idea where I was, no legal grounds to touch the assets, and no control over the narrative, because I wasn't playing her game anymore. I wasn't going to argue. I wasn't going to explain. I wasn't going to defend myself in front of people who knew what they saw at that party and still chose to stay silent. I was done performing. Let her explain that to Nick. Let him ask, "Why don't we just use your card?" And let her scramble for an answer. Let him wonder why the account name doesn't match, why the lawyer won't return her call, why her husband doesn't send angry texts or beg her to talk. Let him sit in that silence. Because this was never about him. It was about her. About how far she thought she could go before the person she was walking over decided to vanish. And I had vanished. Not in anger, in precision, in peace. Because sometimes the loudest thing you can do is say nothing, and let the silence rearrange the room. When I left her world, I didn't vanish. I evolved. For a while after I left, I stayed completely offline. No emails, no social media, no credit card trails, no phone tied to my old number. I even kept the GPS disabled on my car, just in case she or someone else got clever. She had no idea where I went. That was the point. I had never realized how invisible you could be until you chose to be. And once you figure that out, it's addicting. At first, I stayed in a short-term rental under a business alias I'd used for freelance consulting. A cabin outside a mountain town, cold and quiet, with barely enough cell reception to text. It had a wood stove, 3 bar stools, and one neighbor who only came by to deliver firewood. I needed the quiet. I needed to hear my own thoughts again without her voice layered over them. And in that stillness, something shifted. I started remembering who I used to be before Sarah and Justin, became the identity I wore everywhere. Back before the dinner parties and curated couple photos and joint everything. Before I let myself shrink to make room for someone who would eventually replace me. I remembered I was good at building things. Systems. Frameworks. Order. That's how I'd made my living: digital infrastructure, cybersecurity auditing, privacy architecture. Making sure other people couldn't be exploited. Funny, right? I protected everyone else, but I never protected myself. Not until it was almost too late. So I started designing something, not for her, not out of revenge, but because I knew there had to be other people like me out there. People quietly suffering under betrayal while the world told them to work it out or take the high road. People who didn't want to fight, but didn't want to be fooled again either. I began working on a new kind of platform, a system for clean exits. Not hiding, not revenge, just quiet, legal, emotionally intelligent disengagement. A structure to preserve dignity when everything else feels like it's on fire. I called it exit architecture. At first, it was just a series of documents, templates, legal resources. Then came the automation tools. Then private advisors. An encrypted client dashboard. A quiet digital footprint cleaner. By the time spring rolled around, I had a full alpha version up and running. A few months later, I wasn't alone. A partner joined. An old contact from my consulting days. Someone who had also gone through a scorched earth divorce. Then another. By the end of the year, we had a core team. We didn't advertise. We didn't post. Clients came through whispers. Referrals from lawyers, therapists, or just the occasional Reddit thread where someone said, "I heard about this thing. Don't know if it's real, but it sounds brilliant." We offered 3 things: discretion, design, and detachment. No screaming matches. No threats. Just clarity, strategy, peace through preparation. My name started circulating in places I never expected: digital privacy forums, divorce law circles, even underground entrepreneur groups. People wanted to know how I had vanished so completely, so cleanly, and why no one had heard a word from my ex since. They wanted to know how I did it without a smear campaign, without a lawsuit, without a messy trail of rage. I didn't give interviews. I didn't do podcasts or guest blogs or talk to reporters. But one day, a business columnist from a major magazine sent me a message through a secure relay, asking if I'd contribute a quote for a piece on digital dignity. I said yes. Just one quote. One sentence. Public humiliation doesn't require revenge. Only silence, distance, and an exit architecture. It went viral. No name. No background. Just the words. And suddenly, I was everywhere without ever showing my face. I didn't plan on Sarah seeing it, but she did. I know because she tried to contact me. First through a mutual friend. Then through a lawyer. Then through a message on LinkedIn. An account I hadn't touched in over a year, which meant she had to go digging. I didn't answer. I didn't block her either. I let the silence sit. Eventually, a friend forwarded me something. A *T from a private women's forum, posted anonymously, but the tone was unmistakable. The kind of post written by someone trying to sound like a victim while revealing just enough to show they weren't. She wrote about a man who engineered his own erasure, and we *P***nized calmness, and disappeared in a way that made people question her side of the story. She said he planned his exit like a hostile takeover, and made her feel like a ghost in a marriage she thought she controlled. She never named me. She didn't have to. People figured it out. Some called me heartless. Some called me brilliant. But I didn't care about either. Because for the first time in my life, I didn't need anyone else's version of the truth to validate my own. I wasn't building a brand. I wasn't writing a book. I was just being. And that, in itself, was power. The kind of power that doesn't need to shout. The kind that speaks only once and lets the silence finish the story. She found me in Portland, at a private gathering I helped organize. I saw her before she saw me, standing near the entrance, clutching a folder, her eyes scanning for recognition. I stepped outside before security could intervene. She looked thinner, older somehow. "I just want 5 minutes," she said. I didn't argue. I just handed her a folder of my own. Finalized legal documents. Everything signed, sealed, irrevocable. Inside was the closure she claimed to want. Forfeiture acknowledged. Claims released. Accounts settled. She opened her mouth, searching for words, maybe a plea or an apology. I said only this: "You wanted to make a joke. I wanted to live." Then I turned and walked back inside. Later that night, she came to an estate event I was hosting. She gave her name at the gate. The guard checked, then shook his head. Moments later, I walked out. She tried to speak. I didn't let her. I handed her a simple card. On it, "You spoke when you should have stood beside me." I turned and walked back through the gate. She stayed outside, alone in the dark, holding the card like a sentence. I hadn't punished her. I'd erased her.